Pigeons 420. Mr. Grow It. And Rob from Cannabis Lifestyle TV. From the Stash Podcast.
From the Stash Podcast, it's your boy Rob from CLtv, Pigeons 420, and Mr. Grow It, also known as Chris to the Gromies.
Hey, boys. Good to see you guys. How you doing?
Living it up, Ja Rule style, baby. You know,
Good. Another day, another dollar.
Another day, another dollar.
Dollar holla. Bars. We got nothing but bars over here. This is a circle of bars.
Wow, did we just start a rap group?
We almost did. I thought you were going to say boy band, but I can't sing.
I'd
be the one who, like,
might
when they
have
break into the rap.
just starts dancing?
Yeah. I get some tattoos and crazy hair. Boom, we're in. Let's get that shit. Oh, man.
like that.
Those are things I wish I would have fucking known about myself, that I could have been a fucking Backstreet Boy.
Right.
But it's funny enough,
we
that's
could've.
what we're talking about today is things we wish we would have known, though, but before we started growing. You know, things going into it, prerequisites, so to speak, that would have helped us way excel faster, like unbelievably faster. I mean, I'm a decade plus now into growing, and there's things that I run into now that I'm like, that's basic shit. And I'm like, yeah, basic shit that I should have known. The fuck? Stupid, like, still, where I'm like, what? Yeah, learning every day still, 13 years into it. So, some things you guys wish you would have known. You know, Chris, start off there. I think you probably got some heat there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll start at the beginning. Things like, things we wish we knew before we started gardening, right? So one of the first grows I had, I struggled from nitrogen toxicity. So I really wish I knew what nitrogen toxicity was and what it looked like prior to getting started, and really keeping an eye out for that, because that's really one of the top issues that can come into the garden, especially as a new grower, is the overfeeding leading to nitrogen toxicity. So back in the day, I mean, when I first started, I didn't really know about pH, ppm, right? I had a friend who kind of showed me the ropes on a lot of things, and he said feed every other time the medium dries out, and feed this amount, whether it be a full dose, half dose, quarter dose, whatever. And over time, those nutrients built up in the medium. Plants' leaves got darker and darker, shiny, curling. I didn't know any of those signs were bad. Looked good to me. The leaves looked nice and green. Didn't see any deficiencies. Wasn't no yellowing or anything. They were just dark, and unfortunately led to the bud structure becoming very airy and not really as dense as it would have been if it didn't have nitrogen toxicity. So that particular grow, I remember, I think I scrapped. I harvested, dried, cured, and really it was just boof. It was not good at all. So I ended up scrapping that grow and moving on. But that is definitely one thing I wish I knew when I started growing, is what nitrogen toxicity was, the signs to look out for, and monitoring more closely.
Yeah, that's good, man, because my thing was close to that. It was more just about the overall toxicity leading to a nutrient lockout. I didn't know about nutrient lockouts. I literally, every single thing on, like, Grow Plants Easy, we'll say, in case Susan's listening, or other websites that have great blogs. I mean, amazing blogs, amazing visuals. But I struggled with comparing those to my leaves, because I was like, hang on, I'm looking at this yellow decaying leaf. Okay, nitrogen, toxicity here. Or, oh, this was calcium. Of course, throw CalMag on anything, it works. I mean, no matter what it was, it didn't work. Everything I threw at it didn't fucking work. And all I was doing was adding more and more and more and more to my medium. And it got more and more locked out. And those plants didn't yield shit. And they were ugly the whole time. And the bud was still decent, but I didn't even want to trim it, because it was like all leaf, no bud. And knowing now that you can't overdo it. And not just overdoing it, like, correcting it isn't just, hey, add more to it. Try to fix it in that sense. No, correcting it sometimes is do less. Step the fuck back and chill out. That's when flushing is a real thing. That's when actually doing the bro science shit is real grow science, and you need to clean that out. You need to be able to go back to feeding it properly and know that those salt buildups can be detrimental to your grow. And for me, it took about, say, 2 crops to get that dialed in, because I was just overdoing it, using Fox Farm at the time, already heavy in food, and I was just feeding and feeding and feeding. It's stupid. Ignorance and lessons learned, but I wish I would have known to pay more attention to that buildup, because, again, some cultivars are going to react differently, but also how you water. If you're not watering evenly, you could get those salt buildups, the pockets in there, which aren't good.
That's a good point. And like just to kind of just add on that runoff, right? When you feed to just get or when you water, correction, to get that little bit of runoff coming out each time you water, that's important. That's important, and that's a tip that you think or you don't think of, And when you're getting into the game, it's like, oh, you do want to get rid of some of that. You don't want it all to be there because it's getting toxic, right? That's a really good point. They're both good points. I think it's fair to say that I didn't know you had to know stuff when you started growing weed. I kind of thought I could just put it in a seed to soil and put a light on top and go. I light cycle. I put my immediately under 12 and 12, and I thought that's how you grow weed. Weed goes under 12 and 12, and like
the plant this big.
But it was actually a little bit taller. Yeah, I didn't realize that you needed a decent light. I underestimated light in general, and I really thought CFLs and could really do the job. And it's amazing how resilient that plant was, and the fact that it even made it through any particular harvest. But it immediately switched to buds flowering, and then at about 8 inches high, she gave me about a quarter ounce of weed, and that was very unforgiving. It was far from good weed. It was.
Oh man, I was gonna say, at least you probably got a quarter of some fire. Fucking boof.
It was boof.
Damn.
Yeah, so definitely something that I wish I had taken into consideration. There's so many things that I wish I had known when I started. And light cycle is one of them, and then of course I wish I knew it, like patience. You need it takes time, and it takes weed to grow weed, because a lot of my harvests never made it to full length, because I was always clipping a little sample here, a little sample there, and trying to like flash dry it to try to make it good. It's like I remember trying to Google how to flash dry weed, or how to do. It's like create a little tinfoil cup, put it in the tinfoil cup, and put it in the toaster, and put the toaster on, and
like house lights on fire.
They're all left all the fucking. There goes all your cannabinoids and all your terpenes.
pH, ppm, and EC. Wish I knew about those when I first started growing, right? So kind of going back again, I mean, I was not monitoring those things back when I was growing with synthetic nutrients. So synthetic nutrients, most bottled lines are going to be synthetic nutrients. They're plant available nutrients. Monitoring the pH, making sure it's the medium's in the correct range for nutrient uptake. I wasn't aware that there was a certain range that's going to impact nutrient uptake. ppm, what's the rough amount of nutrients that are in the medium there, parts per million, or EC. Some people go by EC, but monitoring those things. So you can get away without it, right? There are people out there that are watching this right now, and they don't monitor ppm, they don't monitor pH or EC. Now, hats off, that's fine. I consider it like an optional thing, right? But for me in particular, it made my job a lot easier, having that knowledge, checking the little bit of runoff, like Pigeons had said, the little bit of runoff, so you can get a sample of your pH to make sure that it's in the correct range, and then a peace of mind type thing to know that, okay, I'm in the correct range, so let me check the ppm. Okay, it should have the amount of nutrients that it needs. Now I'm expecting to see good growth, right? When I was ignoring those things, I was running into overfeeding issues, underfeeding issues, being nutrient lockout due to not being in the correct pH range. Knowing that I should have been checking those beforehand would have definitely reduced the amount of headaches I've had in the past. That's one thing I definitely wish I knew when I first started growing.
And I think that leads into.
I think anyone who says they don't check pH and ppm, it's because they already know it. They check. Like, I'm one of those people too. I don't check it. Well, like, this is what I'm going to say. I don't check it either. I checked my pH one time, and my water is very consistent. Comes out of the exact same water treatment center. It's the exact same thing. No, I don't check it every day. I don't check it every week. It's just consistently the exact same as it comes out of the tape. Would it change? Maybe. I don't check it. I don't know. So it's like, then do I check the parts per million? Not always, but what's the first thing I do if I have any issues, though? Of course, you gotta check your pH. You gotta check your. You gotta dial it back. So anyone who says that they don't check it, well, just wait till you have an issue. Yeah, you like it's like the same person who says I've never had bugs. Oh, just give yourself a nice warm hug. Give yourself a nice warm hug. You just don't know they're there. Okay, let's be real.
Or yet.
So it's just there's ignorance, and then there's people that I would argue I don't check it either, but you have to elaborate. So
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I totally agree. It's just funny though when you mention all those things you touched on are where I'm going. Is I didn't check my pH for one until I did it before I added my nutrients in when I first started. So I didn't realize that was a thing, and also how I put the nutrients in each step by step. I'm looking at I've got 4 bottles. Whoop-de-whoop, do it all up. It was only until I used Golden Tree that I realized the sequence of putting things in. And I'd see sometimes I'm using, for example, like silica, and my mix is looking a little weird, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is this sitting at the top? But I just mixed it faster and I would pour it in, and my plants would not benefit like they should, and they would do okay. I mean, they still would do okay, just based on the good cultivar, all genetics. But how I was going about it was shitty, and I'd run into issues, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm checking my pH is good, and people are telling me, make sure you check pH. ppms, this and that. So I did that before I add my nutrients in. Every time, I was checking my ppm and my pH before, and now it seems like common sense. I barely want to admit that.
I think we've all kind of been there. Okay.
It was just fucking stupid, man, and that kind of fell into with VPD too, where I'm not anal about VPD, but in the sense of how important your humidity and your temperature is, the environmental factor. If you're not on top of that, everything that you think is going to go to this certain way, you're like, I'm going to be able to produce X amount, the quality is going to be this or that. You're hindering that performance the entire way there. From your trichomes to the overall production, it's your plant's going to suffer. I used to try to, for the purpose of being preventative for mites and things like that in the summer, I'd have my humidity as low as I could have it, 20% on average. In veg, first 2 grows. Good cultivars. That's all that was there, because they grew and they made it, and I
did very similar. Good genetics go a long way.
These and this is shit. People are going to think we're just idiots after this video, but
things we should have known. Things we
should have known. Now we know.
Again, I kind of build off that. I love how we do this, because it's these are things that I should have known. And it's when mixing nutrients is a very important thing too, what you're mixing when. That's why I follow the chart of most nutrient producers. They have a chart that say exactly what to add, but what's important is that you're adding one at a time, and then you have to mix your solutions in between applications, or in between doses, if you will, because you need to activate those microbes, whatever's in there. You need to get them going, and you want to see that little bit of bubbles. You got to agitate. And so that's a huge thing that I didn't know, and that's one of those things that you said. You're right. You'll have good results, but you won't have great results.
So what takes you to the next level is that thing you're missing. Right. It's comparable with the microbes. I was adding my microbes in before I would pH, and hearing directly from Colin from Mammoth P, and Gina and the people over there at Plant Revolution. Shout out Great White AE. They explained thoroughly that, hey, you're stupid. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I know. Now
I was now I know. Thank you for educating me, because ignorance is only stupidity when you decide to not ask for help. It truly is the case. If you decide to be that person in the back of the classroom who holds your fucking hand down and doesn't say, hey, I'm doing this, and this. What am I doing wrong? Can you help me? Well, fuck yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't want to hear you complain.
Well, I don't want to help yourself. Nobody's going to help you. Right?
Another thing that I wish I knew about when I started growing was these organic blends, right? I only thought that you could grow with bottled nutrients. I didn't really know about the organic route. For the first 6 years, I was growing with Fox Farm Trio and CalMag. And, years later, I'm using these organic blends now. Shout out to the Green Sunshine Company, make Earth Dust, which is an organic blend. You've got Dr. Earth. There's so many. Build a Soul has a craft blend. But organic blend, basically it's a blend of different organic dry amendments is kind of what I'm referring to here. And it makes the process so much more easier because really you have that initial amending of your soil. Then you have a top dressing that comes, usually a top dressing before you flip to flower, roughly 30 days in. And then 30 days into flowering, you do another top dressing. And that's it. You don't have to mix up any bottled nutrients on a weekly basis like you do with synthetic nutrients. And, I wasn't even aware that process even existed. I thought organic, I don't even know what I thought organic was back in the day, but I didn't know it was going to be simply top dressing and the initial amending. I thought I was going to have to take a million different amendments and figure it out on my own. I had to be my own soil scientist and figure out, a cup of this and I think a cup of this for the calcium. You don't have to do any of that. You can get an organic blend that that is specifically amended for the cannabis plant, for example. And you just apply it, a few times, and then you just water. That's all you're doing is just watering, mixing nutrients. So I've shifted to that over the years, and I'm glad I did because it's definitely a huge, huge time saver when it comes to feeding.
Yeah, I mean, the organic side of things, it was intimidating to me too early on. I wish I would have known that there was the pre-done stuff. Even with super soils, the complicated side of super soils were the ego growers who would want to throw out the complicated recipes when it's like, this is more advanced. You can do it. You can for sure do it. But give me the easy starter. And shout out to Subcool, RP to him. He created the easiest, most approachable one that I've seen on the web by far. Just things that you could really get locally, that you can understand what the fuck you're reading, and you know why it's working. For me, I didn't do it for years until Build a Soil came around. And it was kind of a more done for content to kind of people who wanted it, the grow community who were like, hey, Rob, try it. You've been talking that shit. Give it a shot. And I did like it. Don't get me wrong. I'm still doing it. But I also do have a love for the organic, or not organic, the mineral-based cocoa side. Just like the way the plants grow. So I have certain cultivars that grow really well with it. So I kind of lean in the middle, and I do grow both. But I didn't realize that I could kind of have a synergistic setup with that by implementing tents. Back in the day, I thought tents, and they were very, very expensive at one point in history for the growers. But then at a certain point, just from doing a video for people of setting up an affordable grow, I saw some on there for like 160, 140, 110. I'm like, motherfucker, what? So I went ahead and got this one over here for like, at the time it was $250. It's a 4x8, which I thought it was a 5x8 because it was listed that, but it was from like Korea or something, whatever. But it was cheap for me. Now it's like 150. I got this one behind me for 99. Mm-hmm. Like, so I didn't realize that I could do that, and by having those separate spaces, you can really have separate grows, and maybe a little bit more to maintain. If one is just water only, and the other is your mineral-based setup, super easy for me. Or implementing things like automation. I thought drip feed systems were DIY only. Everything, I complicated it when I first started. I wish I knew there was pre-assembled things that you can purchase. I'm like, like drip ray, a hydrolock system. Didn't know that existed. Just
I couldn't
stumbled
imagine
on it.
even just starting with that.
Yeah, dude, and I know people who do, and I'm like, holy fuck. See, you got these new growers who are starting now and watching channels like ours and learning all of our mistakes and avoiding them to start. They're going to be better growers than us in 2 years.
Easily.
Because they're doing everything we did with no mistakes.
Yeah. And speaking about the auto watering, that's one thing that was on my list is I wish I knew how much time I would save with the auto watering. So blue mats, for example, is a lifesaver, and I've used the auto pots as well, but blue mats in particular, for the reason I'm about to mention, is really you can put these carrots in your medium and it just kind of drips down. It's a drip system. It's gravity fed. You just have this one reservoir where you mix up your nutrients and it goes to all your plants. Now, when you're on the synthetic side of things, different plants, different phenos, going to uptake nutrients differently, so you could potentially see some problems there. But on the organic side of things, particularly when I'm doing the top dressing of nutrients, having those blue mats, I'm just filling up my reservoir. I'm not even doing any hand watering anymore. It makes things a lot easier. And these blue mat systems, I'm looking online right now, you can get a 5-pack of carrots for $50. And it's like there's just so much time saving versus every 2 or 3 days, however many days it takes for your medium to dry out or to water. You just save so much time having that auto watering system. So blue mats have been a game changer for me. And also another thing kind of to follow up off that, piggyback off that, is keeping that medium moist at all times when you're in organic is another thing that I learned. Yeah. So auto watering system has helped with that, but it's important that when you have these dry nutrients, when you're top dressing, for example, that top layer is moist at all times, because the microbes need to be active, breaking down those minerals, or else you're going to see deficiencies on the plants. So when I first started growing organically, I was letting the medium dry out just like I would with synthetics, and it led to problems, unfortunately. So being able to keep that medium moist at all times, utilizing a mulch layer up top, which helps keep that top layer moist. I wish I knew that back in the day. I wish I knew about cover crops and how there are different cover crops that can actually fix nitrogen. For example, clover takes nitrogen from the air, fixes it, and puts it into a plant available form for your plant.
Yeah.
As I wish I knew about that. So there's a lot of different things. And then chop and drop, right? A lot of people, when you're defoliating your leaves, just chopping them up into real small particles, putting them into your medium, and those will break down over time. Use them as a multilayer, they'll break down. Or if you have worms in there, the worms eat those up and turn them into nutrients. But I used to just defoliate and throw away the leaves. Now I actually use them in my medium, just drop them into the chop and drop technique.
Gold.
So it just makes it so
too
much
every
easier.
episode. I swear to God,
Right.
guys, I learn shit every episode. Right here with you, like that was gold, dude. I had no idea. We're gonna have to have another organic conversation, since you and I have gotten a little further into doing it since we had that organic versus synthetic talk, and then maybe we'll get Pete to give it a shot. But I think, like I said, I truly, in my full hearts of hearts, believe there's no right way or wrong way in organic or mineral based, because I definitely have this whole grow right here is all mineral based. I've got another garden somewhere else that's all organic, and for the reason of I'm here and I could hover over it, I like it, and I see the results of like the certain cultivars that I have. I need to dial it in really, really tight. Even the headbanger on the organic run, it still was a little too much nitrogen, just a fucking pinch. Not any other plant that I've grown is that, but just that one. They were bending just the tiniest bit. The tips were burning, and I'm not opposed to changing up my whole process, I'd have to say, but like learning with the side of working with Mother Nature has been very attractive for me. I think had I would have known early on that these things were more approachable, I probably would have approached them earlier. It just took me a long time, and it took a lot of marketing and advertising to break its way into my brain, so that way I see them like, oh, here's what it is. That's the reason why big companies like Advance have been able to do so big. When I first started, I thought you had 5 companies, maybe 3 companies that you can get bottles from. Dynagrow, Advanced Nutrients, and I saw Botanicare. Those are the big ones, just randomly.
Same.
And then
here.
I saw a bottled organic line, the only bottled organic line at the time that I saw, because I didn't realize that Nectar of the Gods was until after the fact, but was General Organics, just because it says organics. So I'm like, all right, well, here's my options. This is all that there is, period. And lo and behold, there's companies like Dutchpro has been around for 30 plus fucking years overseas. Mm-hmm. You've got, again, Dynagrow's been around for a long time, but you've got ones that I never even knew existed, with like Roots Organic. Tons of them, man.
Well,
tons
and
of
that's
them.
just at the time when we started growing, we all started roughly around the exact same
Fox
time.
Farm. Mm-hmm.
We did not have that these companies didn't have that exposure of being able to produce for cannabis. You know what I mean? Despite that's exactly what they were crafting themselves for.
Yeah.
When I did get into it, like you said, there were the big three or few. Advanced had a huge run on the game. It was overzealously.
Is another one.
Yeah. Flora before it was, or who is that? Who owns
Technoflora?
Yeah.
And then General Hydroponic, but still, there was only like
GH. It's G. Yeah, you're right. General.
your hierarchy.
But it like Advance was over the top, in your face, a cannabis producer or a cannabis nutrient, and that was your option. And I wish I also had known that there were decent bottled nutrients out there, or at least
for better prices,
nutrients focused for cannabis. Because I went with Miracle Grow, and it was first I had Miracle Grow soil, and then I also had Miracle Grow like a powder in in water shake solution for perennials. Like it was just it was Miracle Grow I was just like, this has to work.
It's Miracle Grow.
Because again, I didn't realize
you went into that
stuff.
shit. It was just fuck YouTube, fuck the internet. I'm just going
Here we go,
basic
baby. Who needs a
man.
light?
Fuck all you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
no
need to
light,
know
dude.
anything.
I'm glad you said that. That was on my mental list that I didn't write down. I thought 1,000 watts. Watts was it. It's all about watts, baby. You need more
What's the
wattage,
matter?
more wattage, more wattage.
I think everybody thought about it was all about watts back
Yeah,
in the day.
gram per
That's what we were
watt, 2
trained.
gram per watt. Like, that's all I want to get. And technology has advanced a ton, for one. For two, my brain has advanced a ton. Then when I was looking into it, I literally was just looking at it from the standpoint of 1,000's bigger than 350 or 600. Like, come on, duh. Common sense. Obviously, and a wider hood is obviously going to cover more plants. Duh. And it's like, but these things, like, I had a parabolic hood when I started. This is a big octagon, fucking wide ass hood.
yeah.
And I had 12
Umbrella?
plants underneath it. Yeah, the big umbrella. No glass. It was hot as fuck. Not air cooled. And it was stupid. I just thought the bigger the better, baby. Fucking BDE. Let's lay her down.
We all did.
Didn't happen. And I was focused on gram per watt. Just kill it. So I'm stuffing more plants in there, thinking that's going to do it. And I'm like, more is not always merrier. It's really not. And I fucked myself early on. It was not good.
Yeah, I fried out seedlings, keeping them like too close at like 1,000 watts. I think I had 600 watts, and I didn't have the light distance correctly, and just destroyed the seedlings.
Too
Because I thought the
intense,
more the
man.
light, the better. You know.
Right.
Yeah,
Light,
Yep.
the
that's
better.
that's what the common sense thought is when you first started. Is more light the better. And I've even ran into that now with LED, where I cranked that Soldier Boy right away. Nope, you need to turn it the fuck down. And I realized some plants, they got to gradually work their way up. The light intensity of some of these new high efficacy lights, man, are blowing the old ones out of the water. And I'm not saying, for the HPS growers who get emotional in the comments, do your thing. If it works for you, it works for you. I see the reasons why for like heat and this and that. Cool. But I'm not that guy. I look at efficiency, efficacy overall, and ROI. And when you're looking at fixtures that are really expensive, like huge shout out to ChillTech. I see that dope shirt you got there, Chris. They're pricey initial cost, but your overall long-term investment on that is so much better. Your plants are going to be happier. Your pockets are going to be happier. The environment's going to be happier because you're not using it so much electricity. I mean, I fuck with them. You can fuck with them too. 420GC5 discount code. But I really think that overall people need to consider the fact that bigger is not always better. More isn't always going to equal more per se. It could equal more headaches, more money, more problems. It also more lights, more problems sometimes.
A lot of these lights, even with the LEDs, like you briefly touched on, are too powerful. I'm running the V3 ES300 by the Green Sunshine Company, and I didn't even put it on full blast the entire grow. It's slightly dimmed for even throughout flowering. I don't need to put it up as high as it needs to go. And there's a lot of lights. You hear the airplane in the background here?
It's cool. No, it's over here too.
I'm right by an Air Force base, so
Air Force,
we're in the same studio.
That's cool.
But yeah, some of these lights, they're just more powerful is not better.
No,
because
I know,
you will
dude.
fry your plants. You're not going to be able to put it on full power. You're going to have to be dim. And it's like, well, why did I spend this much money if I can't put it on full power? So definitely just be wary of that.
Well, and that's where people get tripped up too, is like it serves its place. Either A, you put it up higher, B, you have it in a larger space, or, C, it's, again, the efficacy. It's got more power, and like you can do a 3x3. Prime example is the Growcraft Ultra from ChillTech. That's like a 300 watt 3x3, I think, or 4x4 space. It'll cover it, and it's a 3-bar light, and that's way too much for probably a 4x4 tent. Honestly, be better for an open space because it's just intense light, man. It's like I think the highest efficacy that's been tested so far. So you've got a light that, yeah, it serves its purpose, but is it going to be overkill? You're gonna have to dial it low and work its way up and have it fit in the perfect scenario for you, because I see it even still with the X6 is when I put the the first organic run that I had over here. It was the prime example. Immediately was too intense a light. I was seeing the yellowing. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What's the deal here? And as soon as I turned it down, I started getting happier again. But it's just the simple fact that when you're in that closed in tent with the high reflective area, you're going to end up seeing potentially too much light. And that too much light can be more detrimental than too little sometimes. So it just depends.
Seeing more and more people on my forum, light burn is becoming more and more common issue because of these high-powered lights. But it kind of, relates to the next one. What I was going to bring up is how challenging it can be, to balance your temperature and humidity, right? So you mentioned the grow lights; it'll increase the temperature. I wish I knew how challenging it can be to balance the temperature and humidity. I mean, when I first ever had a grow tent, I thought grow tent, need to grow light, need a fan in there. intake fan for air exchange. I need my grow pot, soil, so on and so forth. Fire up my tent, put the plants underneath there. All of a sudden, the temperature skyrockets. It's like, oh, great. Now what do I do? Well, add in air conditioning or increase the speed. So I had to figure out increasing the speed, and then I get the temperature right. Now, well, the humidity is super low because I'm sucking out all the humidity because I'm exchanging more air. So it's like now I got to add in a humidifier. So in the beginning, it definitely can be challenging to be able to balance that temperature and humidity to be in the ideal ranges. I wish back then what I did is I wish I put all the equipment into the grow tent, fired it up, and tinkered with it for like 2-3 days and before I put plants in there. I think that would have been beneficial. But yeah, I mean, every climate is different. Some people live in very humid climates, so they need a dehumidifier. I live in a very dry climate, so I need a humidifier. I need multiple humidifiers, actually. I wish I knew the challenges that I would face balancing the temperature and humidity. So underestimated that one for sure.
I'm playing Never Have I Ever, but it's like one thing I wish I knew. One thing I wish I knew also with what you're saying is how when you're using all those things in one space, how that electrical consumption can impact a place that isn't used to having that much fucking electrical usage. You've got all these lights, and this is back when I'm using my HPSs, but I had like 4,000 watts in this same space right here we're at. Plus I had a humidifier, a dehumidifier sometimes when I needed it.
4,000 plus, right?
Yeah, and then fucking AC, fans, the veg lights too. So I had in a space over there, I just had 2 T5s set up with fans and AC directed in there. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, how many times that motherfucker shut off? Like flip the switch.
How many plugins you burnt?
Oh man,
cords melted.
Like
because I've
just
done
not
that.
knowing, thinking like, oh, do this. Like houses don't run on that. That's not what most places do. You have to have that kind of custom wired, and you don't just think you're going to be Tim Allen in that motherfucker because you will Tim Allen that shit. You need to be Bob Vila.
I had to get my entire grow room completely wired to be a grow room because
like
you
this
can't
place
actually put that
up.
much onto a 15 amp breaker. It just doesn't hold that much.
No. No.
And you could buy like a $10, $15 device. I think it's called a kilowatt meter, and use those. I have one of those. I bought one of those real early on my grow to make sure I wasn't exceeding the amperage per circuit.
Smart preventative measure.
Yeah,
I should have. I wish I would have known about that.
Right. And I think Chris, you mentioned a good point of like acclimating your garden before you grow in it. I compare that as to like an aquarium before you get fish. You ever done that, or has anyone ever done that? You never fill a fish tank with water out of the tap and then be like throw fish in it. You need the pump to run. You need everything to flow. You got to work out the chlorine. You got to just get it to a stable habitat. Your garden is no different than that. You need to give it the time to. You're gonna walk in your garden. You're gonna put on the light and get everything going and be like, okay, wow, it's only 80 in here. This is okay, but you haven't closed the door. You haven't left. Okay, you're breathing. You're giving off CO2. Like your presence is having an impact on that environment. You need to run it for 12 hours. I always say get it good 12. That 18-hour period. So it's like running for 12 hours. If you're doing flower, I like to do 18. If you're going to do 18 and 6 for a day, check those thermometers. Get the ones that give you the range of how high and how low you had been, and go from there. It's a good idea to build I don't know how many we're going to do here, but I'm only like a month or two into using a tent, and I didn't realize. I wish I knew. How much easier it was to control the environment on a tent than it is to control the environment on an open grow space.
Yeah.
Like, duh. And man, I spent so much money trying to cool down my basement rather than a grow space.
Fuck, dude.
I think it depends.
For Chris, I was going to say, variable-wise, for Chris, it's probably a little bit more extreme to have that closed-in space.
It's a little bit easier because I live in a desert. It's a little bit easier. Like a particular summer versus winter, it's easier for me in the summertime to be in that open space, so it doesn't get too hot in that small grow tent, for example.
Right.
But to kind of piggyback off what you were saying is you not only need to control the environment in your grow tent, but your lung room as well. So the room that your grow tent is in it can be important to control that as well. So when you're exhausting the air out of your grow tent, the air coming in is of the proper humidity, is of a low enough temperature. I made the mistake in the past where my living room was like 80 degrees. And it's like, well, if I'm pumping out 80 degrees coming in, there's no wind to be able to control temperature. So it needs to be lower. It needs to be in the 70s, low 70s is what I personally can get away with my living room to be. And for the RH, it can be, 45, 50%. If it's any lower than that, then I'm going to run into issues in my grow tent. So that's just for me. That's what works for me. But I'm sure there's people out there as well that
There always is.
Closely monitors that and would recommend monitoring the lung room as well.
Oh yeah.
I did the same thing, just opposite. It was too cold in my lung room and too warm in my tent, and I open up the tent and it's just sweating. There's just water flowing down the side. I was like, oh my God, welcome to the Amazon. And it
It's like a beer that got left out. It's like, oh no, condensation.
Right.
Oh,
But I am curious from you guys though. What are some of the things you wish you knew when you started growing? Because I honestly believe we could keep going. I wish.
I know. I almost
wish
want to
I
stay for
knew
part two
now.
because I've got some extras.
I wish I knew now what I knew back then, because it's like I would have saved money, I would have saved time, and boy, would I have saved smoking some just okay weed. I would have had great weed all the time. Something I didn't have, but I am curious. What's something you wish you knew? I want to hear it in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Do you like these?
Cool.
Go ahead.
If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, leave a review, a rating and review. You're allowed to leave on that. That helps tremendously with people finding this podcast. You can always share it if you know somebody who would potentially like this information. We'd appreciate that. Share it. But Apple Podcasts in particular, you can leave a rating and review, and that helps out a ton. So thank you to anyone who takes the time to do that for us.
Yeah, if you're foxing with us, definitely fox with us there. YouTube, Spotify, wherever, or watch CLtv.com. Or even twitch.tv/from the stash podcast. With that being said,
every week,
I think. Yeah, maybe sometimes
every
twice.
week.
What? It's your boy Rob from CLtv, Pigeons 420, and Mr. Grow It. We will see y'all next time.
Peace.